that complex sentences are made of two types of clauses: dependent and independent clauses. In this chapter, we are going to learn about one type of dependent clause, called the relative clause. A relative clause or adjective clause is a type of dependent clause that refers to the noun of the main clause by identifying the noun or adding extra information about the noun. Defining relative clauses are the ones that identify the noun. Non-defining relative clauses are the ones that add extra information about the noun. For example, defining relative clause. The girl who's crying has a fever. Who's crying is the relative clause. The girl has a fever is the main clause. Who is a relative pronoun. So note this, the relative clause comes always after the words it describes, in this case, girl. In the first example, I add essential information that affects the meaning of the sentence, and that is why I don't use commas. The girl who has a fever, it's not any girl, it's the girl that's crying. I need the information in the relative clause to identify the girl that has a fever. Now let's see an example of a non-defining relative clause. The girl who's in second grade has a fever. Who is in second grade is a relative clause. Who is a relative pronoun. The girl has a fever is the main clause. In the second example, I add extra information about the noun, and that is why I use commas. I don't need to know that the girl is in second grade to identify the girl that has a fever. We learned that coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions work like glue to join simple sentences and build compound and complex sentences. When we make complex sentences with relative clauses, the words that we use to join the sentences are called relative pronouns. Here you can see a list of the relative pronouns: that, which, who, where, and when. That refers to things and also to people. Which refers to things. Who refers to people. Where refers to places. And when refers to time. You can pause this video and read the examples if you like. Relative clauses to identify a preceding noun. We use relative clauses to post-modify a noun to make clear which person or thing we're talking about. In these clauses, defining relative clauses, we can have the relative pronoun who, which, whose, or that. Relative pronouns can act as the subject or the object of the clause. As a subject, for example, isn't that the woman who lives across the road from you? The police said the accident that happened last night was unavoidable. The newspaper reported that the tiger which killed its keeper has been put down. Warning: the relative pronoun is the subject of the clause. We do not repeat the subject. It is wrong to say the woman who she lives across the road, the tiger which it killed its keeper. As an object. Have you seen those people who we met on holiday? You shouldn't believe everything that you read in the newspaper. The house that we rented in London was fully furnished. The food was definitely the thing which I enjoyed most about our holiday. Warning: the relative pronoun is the object of the clause. I do not need to repeat the object. It is wrong to say, have you seen those people who we met them on holiday? The house that we rented it in London was fully furnished. The food was definitely the thing I enjoyed it most about our holiday. Relative clauses of time and places. We also use when with times and where with places to make it clear which time or which place we're talking about. England won the World Cup in 1996. It was the year when we got married. I remember my 20th birthday. It was the day when the tsunami happened. Do you remember the place where we caught the train? Stratford-upon-Avon is a town where Shakespeare was born. Note this. We can leave out the word when in some sentences. England won the World Cup in 1996. It was the year we got married. I remember my 20th birthday. It was the day that tsunami happened. Giving additional information, non-defining relative clauses. We use who, whom, whose, and which, but not that, in relative clauses to tell us more about a person or thing. As a subject, my uncle, who was born in Hong Kong, lived most of his life overseas. I have just read Orwell's 1984, which is one of the most frightening books ever written. Again, warning. The relative pronoun is the subject of the clause, so I do not need to repeat the subject. It is wrong to say my uncle, who he was born in Hong Kong, lived most of his life overseas. I have just read Orwell's 1984, which it is one of the most frightening books ever written. That is wrong. Again, you can notice that I'm adding extra information that it's not defining. As an object, we saw the latest Harry Potter film, which we really enjoyed. My favorite actor is Marlon Brando, who I saw in On the Waterfront. We can use whom instead of who as an object. My favorite actor was Marlon Brando, whom I saw in On the Waterfront. And warning again, the relative pronoun is the object of the clause, so I do not need to repeat the object. We saw the latest Harry Potter film, which we really enjoyed it. I don't need to use it. My favorite actor is Marlon Brando, who I saw him in On the Waterfront. I do not need to use him. More examples. Tourists who use audio guides in museums learn more. The city where I was born is in Italy. Fruits, which are a great source of vitamins, shouldn't be so expensive. The dress that my mother gave me belongs to my grandmother. Susan Sarandon, who won an Oscar for Dead Man Walking, is my favorite actress. In these examples, you can see the relative pronouns who, where, which, that, who, and you can see the relative clauses in blue. So which of these are defining relative clauses? The first one, the second one, and the fifth one. Notice that defining relative clauses don't have commas. Notice as well that non-defining relative clauses add extra information about the noun that they are modifying. In summary, relative clauses are a kind of dependent clause. They refer to a previous noun and come right after the noun they modify in the sentence. They begin with a relative pronoun: who, whose, that, when, where, and which. There are two types of relative clauses: defining relative clauses and non-defining relative clauses. This is the end of the explanation. Please continue to the next section for practice.